Okay, so this is the Grell OAE2, the dynamic driver open back headphone from Axel Grell, and it's the follow-up to the OAE1, which some of you guys might be familiar with. And that one went for a very strange and unique kind of concept by placing the driver very far in front of the ear, which is unconventional for headphones. The OAE2 does the same thing, but it's very different in a number of ways. And in my opinion, the OAE2 is better than the original, but this is still one of the more unique headphones, one of the strangest headphones that I've ever come across, and it's worth talking about. So let's get going with the review. Okay, just some details here. The Grell Audio OAE2 is available at the Grell Audio website. I'll leave that linked in the description. It's $5.99, and I think a lot of folks bought the original one on the more recent clear-out sales for dramatically less expensive. And I just want to highlight that just because they look similar to one another, that doesn't mean that the sound is similar. The sound is notably different, though there are some similarities, and I'll get to that in the sound quality section. These headphones are, of course, designed by Axel Grell, the legendary engineer behind some of my absolute favorite headphones, like the HD600 and 650, and he's been putting together interesting ideas into headphone form. But before going any further, let's just talk about a couple things. So with the OAE2, you get this case. It's rather gigantic. When I first got this, I was like, wow, that's huge. The headphones have full cup swivel, so you can lie them flat, and that's how you get it into this case. And so it does actually have a slimmer profile for if you want to put it into things or stack it with things, you can do that. The cables, you get two different cables here. One's terminated in Pentacon 4.4. The other is 3.5 millimeter with a 6.35 millimeter adapter. And the cables themselves don't feel particularly fancy in any meaningful way. They're just simple, no-nonsense cables. But this headphone is designed in such a way where you can plug it in on either side. So that's a nice touch, right? You can plug it in on the left side or the right side. Now for the headphone itself, visually it looks rather similar to the OAE1, but there have been a couple of changes to it. The pads are different, and then also the headband is different. It's a bit easier to wear. Like, I find it more comfortable. It doesn't clamp as hard. The OAE2 seems to have better extension for the arms, so it can fit a wider range of heads. This one fits my larger than average head, and it also fit Cameron's larger than average head when we went to check this one out at the Vienna high-end show. He had a problem with the original one where he couldn't even get that on his head. This one did fit him, so big head approved mostly. One thing to note, despite the fact that there's actually a decent amount of padding here up top, it's not exactly the widest surface area on top of the head. So for people who are sensitive to that hot spot that can form up top, this might be a concern. I personally don't have any issues with this, but that is something that I noticed, right away, that you do sort of feel it up there. I found myself having no trouble getting through a full day of work wearing this headphone. It's just something that I wanted to flag because it's not like that wide surface area suspension strap kind of thing that, folks with smaller heads might prefer. So if you're sensitive to that, this is something to keep in mind. Maybe there can be a Capra strap for this design as well. I'm not sure. As of filming this right now, I have no idea. Capra, let's get on it. And for the rest of the mechanical and physical design, this is very similar to the original. You get tilt and swivel, and personally, I find it visually quite nice to look at. I know this is going to be different taste for every person, but I really like the way that this looks. It's kind of got that like almost retro-y look to it in a way, like, it's a headphone and it functions like a headphone and it doesn't make you feel like you're an alien when you wear it. Let's talk about the design here now, because this is what really is unconventional about these headphones. And there are several concepts going on here. Number one is that with conventional headphones, the driver sits at the side. If you reposition that to be more in front, this is a better fit or a closer match to how you would sit relative to the sound source if you're just sitting and listening to speakers. Number two is that by moving the driver forward to in front of the ear, you actually move it away from the ear, making the ear less occluded by the mechanism for the driver and the driver being there. And this is actually a thing that you can notice. You can perceive this with other conventional open back headphones even. And so you're getting something that's meant to be more open. Now there is still material here between the ear and the rest of the world around you, so it's not going to be as transparently open as like an electrostatic headphone, for example, but the whole driver assembly portion is not there. So that's an interesting component to this. And the third thing is that the sound profile, so the tuning profile that this has, is meant to be similar to that of a front biased sound field listening condition. So again, more similar to speakers at a distance, speakers in a room coming at you from a certain angle. The same was true of the OAE1, but this one has a different balance overall to the whole thing. So the OAE1 sounded more dark and shouty. The OAE2 is brighter and a lot more neutral by comparison. But that same idea of the front biased sound field condition to better match the way you might hear speakers, to me, this is a concept that doesn't make that much sense. With headphones, you are effectively wearing a sound helmet. So when you put headphones on, you have no directional or positional cues to tell you that the sound is coming from there or there or there, right? When you turn your head, the sound, as it is right here, goes with you. And because the sound goes with you when you're wearing headphones, unless there's head tracking or something in some of those types of devices, you have no way to tell your brain that the sound is coming from a different direction. The brain is getting that same frequency response the whole time. So for anybody who's unaware, the way that we localize sounds in space, just naturally in the world, is because of how sound changes as it's being impacted differently by the ear at all points for where it's traveling. And with headphones, we don't get that. We just get a fixed sound source on our heads. It doesn't change. And I want to be clear that these headphones, both the OAE1 and the OAE2, were designed intentionally trying to create a speaker-like timbre. So I think because of this language, some people started talking about soundstage and spaciousness and all that kind of stuff, but it was never meant to be about that. It was only ever meant to be about timbre, or primarily about timbre. And I guess the question is this effective? Is this a good thing? And my answer is, it shouldn't be. As much as I want to like this headphone, I respect Axel Grell. He's a friend of mine. I think the world of what he's done for this industry. This is a concept that I'm really struggling to get behind. With that said, we should talk about how the OAE2 actually sounds, because this is where things get really interesting. Let me dive into the measurements here, and I've measured this on the B&K 5-2.8, I've measured this in the Graz system, and I've also measured it on my own head using in-ear microphones. And for each of these systems, yes, my head is also a system, we've done the rig-specific calibration for them. So it's the same process. So we'll be able to see exactly how this headphone is behaving differently between the rigs and my own actual head, which is cool. And one thing I want to highlight for this is there's a default wearing position for this headphone on the head, but you can also kind of wear it so that it's like further back on the head. And when you do that, that dramatically changes the sound, especially in the treble. And the default position is meant to be the more forward position, so where the driver is genuinely further forward and in front of your ear rather than kind of hovering over it, which you can kind of do by positioning it further back, right? So let me show you how this measures on both the B&K 5-2.8 head and the Graz as well. And you can see that for the bass and for the mid-range, the OAE2 is rather excellent. Like, the bass on this is really good. It's well extended, it's a little bit elevated, and the mid-range is spectacular. And subjectively, this sounds great for the mids as well. Like, the bass is punchy and solid, but not so overboard that it detracts from the mid-range clarity. And then there's also not so much upper mid-range that it becomes shouty or glary, which is one of the problems that I had with the OAE1. And then basically everything up until around 6K is fantastic with this headphone. It's exactly what I like. And then things go slightly weird. And the main thing to highlight there is that it kind of just looks like there's a dramatic dip or like a hole going on there in the treble. But here's the interesting thing about this. When I wear this headphone, measured with in-ear microphones, this is the response that I get. On my head, we're getting a, once again, spectacular response up until around 6 kilohertz, where I actually get a dip, then a peak at around 7 to 8 kilohertz. And then it dips again rather dramatically at around 10 kilohertz. And so for me, I'm actually getting a pretty strong peak right between 7 and 8 kilohertz. And this is why, to me, it sounds quite sibilant. Like, it's actually quite a bit brighter in the mid-treble on my head in comparison to the headphone measurement systems, to the point where that stands out way stronger over any of the rest of what's going on with the sound signature here. So for me, everything sounds incredibly clear and incisive, just with a bit of a railroad spike there for me at around 8 kilohertz. And this is a region where vocal recordings will have the S's, F's, and T's emphasized or exaggerated, and this is what creates sibilance. So it's that sound. They can sound harsher in the mix. I notice this. I hear this right away. And I hope this helps you guys understand that when you guys are reading graphs, know that this kind of difference can exist for you as well. In particular, with a design like this, it's created a distance relationship between the driver and the ear at such an extreme angle. And because people have different heads and ears, where the way that they wear headphones is also going to be different. It's almost impossible to predict this based on measurement systems alone. You can't know just by looking at conventional headphone measurement data how a device like this is going to perform on your head. I can tell you how this sounds to me, but I can't tell you how this is going to sound to you above a certain frequency. Again, for the rest of this, for the bass and the mids, this is rather consistent across all 3 different heads and ears, like basically everything up until around 6 kilohertz. And it's remarkably good. Like, this is some of the best bass and mids that you'll come across. But then the treble is like, what is happening? So for me, in comparison to the OAE1, the OAE2 sounds a lot more neutral and a lot more balanced. It doesn't have that sort of dark and shouty characteristic that I described that one as. This one is instead more neutral overall, just that it has a rather strong treble resonance on my head. But here's the weird thing about this. I don't think this is the intended response. So it's actually really hard for me to judge whether or not this speaker-like front biased sound field timbre is effective. Because to me, it just sounds like sibilant. That's it. So this should make you wonder if that region is responsible for the front biased sound field condition, or this more speaker-like timbre that Axel Grell is trying to create with these headphones, and the OAE1 as well. Is anybody getting this? Were the people who loved the original OAE1 actually getting the timbre sound field that was intended? And is the same going to be true for this one? Or are people getting responses closer to what I'm getting here? Or are they getting something else different entirely? It's without actually understanding the in situ performance of the device, it's rather difficult to know. So I've been trying to like answer this question of like, does the Grell OAE2 sound good? Well, yes, it sounds better than the OAE1, but like, is this working? Is this good? Is it effective? And my answer is genuinely, I don't know. Genuinely, I don't know. Maybe. At the very least, it is something totally unique. It is not trying to hit the conventional targets that people these days are trying to hit. If you really value that, and if you want something that is just outside the box, that is the Grell OAE2. Like, I can't think of any other headphone that's coming out right now that is trying to do something this different. And it's not just different at random. There's an intentional design concept here. Same with the OAE1 that's being tested out to see if this does actually work. And the thing is, I'll be upfront about this. I want this to be good. Like, this is something new and different and weird. And I admire the ambition to try and break conventions, to try and do something new, because that's what he's doing here. But this is one that I would have a hard time recommending a blind buy on. If you can try and listen to it somewhere in person first, that would be recommended with this, because it's so outside the box that, you know, I can't just say, yeah, this is most likely how it's going to perform for you, because I genuinely have no idea. Now, I'm going to give this a ranking out of 10 for me. But before doing that, consider supporting us by joining the YouTube membership. And we'll also have some new stuff for you up on headphones.com. Becoming a member here on YouTube allows you to hang out with me during live streams and debate me on all kinds of stuff. And it also buys me a coffee in the process. And for those of you who've joined, we greatly appreciate it. So for the Grell OAE2, I really like the bass and the mids. The treble is definitely a struggle for me. So for the sound quality, this one's going to get a 5.1 out of 10. The comfort I find to be pretty good though, so this gets bumped up to a 5.3. This is going to sound harsh to anybody who's unfamiliar with our ranking system, but again, we're trying to use the full range of possible sound quality. And for this headphone in particular, I think it's going to be a bit controversial. I think for some people, this is going to be great, and for others, this is going to be uniquely strange. And for me, it's neither. It's like great in some ways, but then not great and bad in another. I genuinely don't know, and that's okay, because that's the end of this video. Thanks for taking time to watch this one, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.